As of recording this, it is officially spooky month, also known as October, one of my favorite months ever because that gives me an excuse to make a bunch of crappy videos about Halloween. I have a lot of plans for this month, but one thing I was also looking up for is reading.
We're flying to Philadelphia! Oh, hell no! That's hell no!
You may be saying, Kane, is there a gas leak in your house or are you on drugs? Nope, I'm actually a child excited to be reading, but for only one reason. I'm not reading Stephen King. I'm not reading Goosebumps. I'm reading Scott Cawthon. Yeah, anything FNAF branded, I feel like I would read. And I have read this book.
Lying. Why you always lying?
And remember enough to give a review on it. It's 3 short stories, each one not connected to each other, kind of. It kind of builds off this big story as it goes on, but none of them are connected at first. It's not like some crazy FNAF stuff, and all of them have like something to do with Freddy Fazbear's in a way. And also, I'm pretty sure these all take place in the same universe. So, let's get into the first book, Into the Pit. Into the Pit isn't only the first book in the Fazbear Frights franchise, but it's also one of the most famous and honestly one of the best books from it, with it having one of the most interesting ideas with a time-traveling ball pit, and also one of the most unique dynamic, okay, I cannot say this word in between the villain and the main character. And you may be saying, hey nerd, can you hurry up and tell us the story? And for that, okay, here's the plot of Into the Pit. So, pretty much the plot surrounds around this little kid, Arnold? Once again, I just can't really pronounce much words. We'll call him Jimmy. So, little Jimmy lives in this run-down, crappy area, and it's so run-down, in fact, he compares it to a rotting possum on the side of the road. But something that's not disgusting is his mom and dad, who are always really busy and have to make him sit in the pizza place and just eat pizza and wait for them, because they're always doing their job. His mom's a nurse, and his dad is, I don't really remember, but it's probably something important. And as I briefly mentioned, Jimmy just has to sit in this old pizzeria while his parents are at work. And he kind of just eats crappy old greasy pizza that's like $1, which is concerning in this economy. Like, $1? That thing has to be made of like rat meat for it to be $1. You have to be eating like food that's not even considered edible. But we're getting off topic. So one day he's really bored of just sitting in this old pizzeria place, and he goes to the back and finds an old dusty ball pit, and for some reason gets in it to prank his dad because he's sick of being forced to sit at an old pizzeria joint all day. But turns out the ball pit is a time machine, and he gets sent back to the 80s. And instead of doing the smart thing and betting on sports and all that, stuff you already know that's gonna happen, or better yet, stop 9/11, he kind of just walks around and hangs out with his friends until going back. But turns out William is back to his shenanigans, and William starts running around killing kids. So Jimmy gotta get out of there, but it turns out William follows him, grabs Jimmy's dad, and throws him in the ball pit, and clones himself. Not really clone, I meant like close, but he turns into Jimmy's dad basically, and then just takes Jimmy home. And no one notices that Jimmy's dad is a robot bunny, except Jimmy. Jimmy's the only one that can see the robot bunny. Pretty much, William just doesn't really do anything. He kind of just walks around, creepily lurks, eats dinner, and probably pounds Jimmy's mom, and doesn't take the chance to kill him for some reason. So Jimmy, he tries to tell his mom doesn't listen, and he just has to lay in bed and listen to his mom get her spine broken, until he eventually goes back to try to find his dad. But the rabbit follows him and dies in the most stupid way possible. It hangs itself on old safety roping or whatever, around the ball pit and just chokes to death. And then Jimmy saves his dad and learns not to hate his parents. Now, I do have some issues with this, one being the villain. It is a cool idea that William, or whatever this monster is mimicking his dad and pretty much just following him around and acting like him. But he doesn't do anything. He doesn't kill anyone. He's not threatening. He just sits there. And it would have been much more interesting and scary if the rabbit maybe like killed his cat or something instead of just being nice. And I mean, sure, he does attack Jimmy a couple times, but other than that, he doesn't kill anyone. He has a 0 body count. He's a loser. I Unless we're talking about the kids he killed, but that doesn't count because we don't really get to see them much. But honestly, it's okay for the villain. The villain's not, like, horrible. Like, I wouldn't say the villain's dog crap, but for what he is in this short story, he's an okay villain. More of being like a Roomba that kind of just lurks around instead of actually killing people. I feel the horror of the rabbit comes from what he can do instead of what he has done. And it's pretty much the same with the meaning of this short, because all the shorts have, like, some meaning it's trying to teach you. And for this one, it's just not to be a dick to your parents. You know, this would work if I had a dad. Fuck you, Dad! But back on a serious note, Into the Pit is a solid introduction to the series. It didn't do anything insane, even though there's a time-traveling ball pit. It's pretty much in the middle for what I would expect from a short story Goosebumps ripoff. And if I had to rate it, it would be a solid 5 out of 10. Perfectly in the middle. It's a mid-book. But now we're gonna move on to one I actually liked a little more. To Be Beautiful pretty much just follows this young girl. Once again, I, for some reason, just can't remember their name, so we're gonna call her Jessica? Yeah, that works. So Jessica is this insecure little girl who kind of just hates herself and her looks, and it makes sure we know that from the beginning of the book, because the first couple of sentences is her comparing herself to Mr. Potato Head. And because of her insecurity, she's kind of just a dick to everyone else. She's a dick to her goated friend Abby, she's a dick to her mom, calling her fat. She's a dick to everyone, and that's actually a realistic approach to insecure people. With most of them being insecure, so they judge other people and themselves because they're constantly just worried about looks and fashion instead of the actual person inside. But after a long day of being a dickhead to people and to herself, she walks by this garbage pile and sees an old car with an arm sticking out of it. Her, being curious, goes up to it and it turns out to be a giant doll. And you know, Jessica, being the weirdo she is, brings it home for some reason and turns it on, and it turns out it's alive. And pretty much the doll tells her that because she cleaned her up and made her look beautiful, she'll give her one wish, kind of like a genie. And judging by the name of this story, what do you think she's gonna wish for? Oh yeah, drugs. Jessica wishes to be beautiful, and the doll hands her this necklace and tells her to never take it off as she, sings her to sleep. And when Jessica wakes up, she's slightly more attractive, and that's pretty much how the book goes on for now. She just wakes up, different part of her body's changed, goes to school, becomes more popular and more of a dickhead to Abby, and just rinse and repeat. Until one fateful day, she gets a boyfriend, and is walking by the trash can until she slips on a banana like a cartoon character. And throughout the whole book, the robot continuously reminds her to never take off that necklace. And you know what happened when she hit the ground? The necklace fell off. And I thought maybe she was gonna turn into a ghost or die on the spot, but we have a couple more pages to go, so what happens? She slowly starts turning into a pile of trash as she runs home and, tries to look for the robot because I'm turning into a garbage pile. But she just can't find the robot, and this is actually a really cool moment because it's just really scary seeing how she's slowly just getting slower and slower. It's actually a really stressful moment, even to read. But eventually, she goes into the garage and finds these bags filled with human arms and limbs, which was weird to hear, but eventually she just can't move anymore, and the robot reveals itself. And pretty much, the robot turns out to be evil. And the robot pretty much just says, "Oh, I'm turning into you," and takes the necklace, puts it on, and turns into Jessica and just walks away. As the robot, real Jessica, just dies. And that's how the book ends. Honestly, I liked this one more than Into the Pit, but I honestly accept that this one is probably worse for a lot of reasons. One being the pacing. I understand what Scott was trying to do here, making it interesting on how and what is going to change about her every day, either being her height or her looks or maybe something scary. But instead it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Oh, my lips are bigger. I go to school, I be a dickhead to Abby the goat, and I go home to go to sleep. Wake up, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. It gets really boring. She gets a boyfriend, that adds a little bit of spice to it, but it really doesn't matter because, it just feels like filler. Some of the most important parts, like when Jessica is talking to the robot doesn't even do anything to hint at being. Only hints I remember and can think of about the robot being evil is her constantly reminding Jessica not to take off the necklace. But you can boil that down to the robot just being nice. And the robot doesn't even do anything menacing or evil until the very last page of the book where she kills Jessica. Other than that, the robot just sits there in the corner. But my favorite part of this short story is actually the meaning of it, because though it is basic, being that you shouldn't be self-conscious, I still really like it because how it portrays it and how it has a realistic approach on self-conscious people. With many self-conscious people becoming mean and rude because once again they only focus on looks instead of personality and the people inside. And even sometimes pushing away their own best friends just to become more popular and pretty. Which is exactly what happens to my glorious Go Abby. Abby being her best friend from when they were even little kids, and Jessica just leaves her the millisecond she gets the chance to be pretty and popular. Oh, but what's that? The popular kids are dickheads and don't actually care for her. The only kid who actually cared for her was Abby. And that really settles in for Jessica when she's dying and the only person that helps her is Abby, the one she abandoned. That was some good writing right there, Scott Cawthon. Good job. Still a mid-book, probably like a 5 out of 6 maybe, but still, I liked it. Let's move on. Now, Count the Ways is probably the best one here, honestly. Other than a few complaints, like most of them, this was a pretty solid short story. With it pretty much focusing on this emo girl who's always talking about killing herself and writing poems about it and listening to sad music. But she doesn't want to move with her family, so she lives with her grandparents for the year. And they're nice people. They feed her, they joke with her, they made her milk and cookies, and she's still the dickhead. She talks about how their grandparents' house is filled with a bunch of random junk like knight's armor and stuff, but I just wanted to mention that. So one day she goes into this robot that is a Funtime Freddy, and it comes to life and tells her to count the ways on different ways it can kill her. Really scary. And she goes back and forth thinking about her life as her life kind of just flashes before her eyes, and she's like rethinking her life because now she's gonna die and there's nothing she can do. And the robot is soundproof too, so at the end of the book it kills her. And honestly, I love the way this book starts off with her being in the robot already, and then she starts having flashbacks about her past. She starts in the evil situation and then thinks of better times. And like most of the FNAF games, this short story is also really scary if you think about being in her situation, because once again, she's in a soundproof robot telling her of all the ways it can kill her. And the personality of this robot is also just really interesting and kind of funny as well, the way it just kind of jokes about killing her. My only complaints are, most of the main characters are really insufferable, but I'm pretty sure that's the point of it, so they can growth. But she is like the worst one out of all of them. But at her final moments, she finally realizes of like how much of a dickhead she's been, and she actually wants to live, but it's just too late and she dies. Which is a really realistic approach to a lot of people, because when they're at that moment, when they're gonna die, they just kind of don't do it. They realize that there's stuff worth living for. They realize that they shouldn't do this, but sometimes it's just too late and you've already went into action. And not even to mention the fire songs that has come from all 3 of these short stories. The Into the Pit song is fire, Count the Ways song is fire, and To Be Beautiful song is okay. And if I had to rate this short story, it would be a solid 6 out of 10. You're still not, like, amazing. Nothing, like, well-written to the top. Like, amazing shit. You get what I'm saying. But it's a solid short story, especially since these are aimed towards kids. And they, though, have a basic meaning. It's a meaning that is supposed to apply towards kids. But with all that said, I'm gonna let live-action A-Nerd talk about the rest. So, here you go.